Hello, it's Weekend Handicapper from weekendhandicapper.com. In this video, we're going to discuss when horses ship in, when you should bet them, and when you should proceed with caution. Before we get started, as always, if you hadn't subscribed to this YouTube channel, Weekend Handicapper, be sure to do so by hitting that subscribe button. Also, check on that or click on that notification button so you can get all the latest tips, tools, and tutorials to help you win more money at the racetrack. So, when horses ship in, let's talk about these shippers. What to do with them. So we're going to discuss what to do with shippers, what to look for in shippers, and how to evaluate shippers. Whether or not you should bet them or stay away from them. So what is a shipper? If you're new to horse racing, you'll hear this term a lot. This horse is a shipper. It's shipping in. So basically, simply, shippers are horses that have been shipped in from one racetrack to another racetrack to race. So a good example that you hear about all the time, you see quite often, is West Coast shippers. If you hear a horse referred to as a West Coast shipper, that means they are typically horses that are being shipped in from a California racetrack to a New York racetrack. In this example. So it's being shipped across country in order to race and compete in at another racetrack. So it's shipped in. That's basically what it is. You might already know that, so forgive me, but for those that this is a new term for, there you go, that's the definition. When I think about shippers and when I evaluate and factor in as part of my handicapping process as it pertains to shippers, I always think, what kind of competition has this horse been running against? And what surface has the horse been running on? If you can get a pretty good grasp of those couple questions or can answer those questions, then I think you'll be able to evaluate and analyze shippers pretty well. Now, it's a fact that some tracks have better quality racing than others. I don't want to pinpoint any racing circuits or any particular racetracks, but they're, on average, quality racing at one track versus another one. So you got to know the different levels of competition at these different racetracks. But what's interesting here in the past years, and it seems to be happening more and more, we have this casino money, or racinos they call them, coming in, or instant racing, or it's helping out the track purses, the purses of races. It's beefing up the purses of the different races. When this occurs at tracks, you get better quality horses. Their connections, their owners want the trainers, they want to get a piece of that nice purse prize. So you're starting to see at some of these tracks that historically haven't been known for their top-notch racing, they're starting to get more competitive fields and better quality horses there because their purses are funded by casino money. And so that's up in the competition level at these tracks that once maybe wasn't considered top-notch. But still, we do have differences, and I'll explain the differences here right now with these race ratings. So, and I apologize, I would show you some past performances where they're located on the past performances, but I got to be respectful of copyrights, and unless I have permission to show past performances, I'm not going to do it because I got to respect the company's wishes. But in most premium past performances, you'll see something called a race rating. So for instance, Brisnet, I use Brisnet all the time, past performances. If you get on twinspires.com, if you're a member of that, Keeneland Select, they're free if you wager on the races. So those ultimate past performances, you'll see a thing called race ratings. It's a term or a number assigned to the types or the level of races that horse has been running in. The higher the number, the more competitive, the higher level competition that horse has been facing. So if you look at race ratings, that could give you a pretty good judge of the level of competition horses have been running in, and then you simply go through each horse that's in the race and see if one of them's been racing in tougher competition than others. So if a horse is shipping in from Monmouth Park, let's say, maybe that race rating is not as good as a horse shipping in from Gulfstream Park. Don't know, depends on the race. But that's a good numerical way, a quantifiable way to see what kind of competition a horse has been facing. And that might give you an edge. Now, some angles when it comes to horses shipping in. You do want to be cautious of horses shipping in from poly track to dirt surface, or vice versa. So if they've been racing on dirt, let's say racing at Churchill Downs, and then they're going to ship to Arlington Park, which has poly track, you probably should be a little leery of that unless that horse has performed well on poly track before, because we don't know how it's going to react to the different surface changes. Now, you want to pay attention to horses shipping in from tracks that have similar track surfaces to the one that they're racing at today. Some say, like in the spring or over the course of the winter to early spring, horses that run at Tampa Bay Downs, Oaklawn Park, those race surfaces, according to a lot of people, are similar to what they're going to be racing at Churchill Downs. So maybe those horses have an advantage because they're used to a similar track surface. And so what I mean by that is the composition of the track, what the track's made of. So it won't be a big jump as far as track surfaces goes because they're coming from a track that's pretty similar to what they'll be running on today as far as the composition of the racetrack is made of. And then, as always, I mean, if there's a track bias going on, if you can spot a track bias, if the rail's gold, if the horses are winning on the inside from inside post, or early speed is holding up, or it's favoring closers, if the horses that are shipping in fit any of those criteria, do not be afraid to bet those horses, because track bias can overcome all that and make sure or enable horses to win no matter where they're shipping from, because the track bias is that strong. So always be cautious of horses switching surface. You always should do that, but especially shippers. Pay attention to horses shipping in from tracks that have the same track surface composition as the one they're doing today, racing at on the particular race day you're betting. And don't be afraid to bet shippers if there's a track bias present. Some other angles to kind of keep in mind is if a horse is shipping in from another track and is dropping down in class, so down a class level, if those odds on that horse are pretty good, to me, pretty good or 5-1 or better, then it could be a good bet. It's worth the risk. If that horse is shipping in from a track that you're not so sure about the competition level, and that horse is a heavy favorite, even though it's dropping down a class, then be cautious. As we always say, the bet or the odds always determines the bet. If it's a favorite, don't bet it. Maybe stay clear of it. But if it has some juicy odds, favorable odds, then it could be a good bet. Take that risk. That horse is classier than what it's facing today. Horse for course angle. It's a very popular angle that I love, that I use all the time. It's found some good price winners. So basically, the horse for course angle is that horse has performed well in the top 3 spots in my book. Came in first, second, or third at that particular track. Remember, slide before, we talked about horses switching surfaces, going from poly track to dirt or dirt to poly track, or this turf course coming in to this turf course. That's a negative, or could be a negative, unless that horse has performed well there before. So always make sure you look in the past performances, races back, just look through the whole entire racing career of that horse. And if it's performed well at that racetrack that it's running at today, then just because it's shipping in from racetrack XYZ doesn't mean it's a throwout if that horse has performed well, horse for course, at the track it's racing at today. So never forget horse for course angle, especially when it comes to betting horses that are shipping in. If you have an older horse, 4 years or up, 4 years old or up, if it's reliable and consistent, don't be afraid to bet the horse if it's shipping in. Because that old faithful horse probably is going to be pretty consistent. So it's worth, again, that's why it's so important. Odds are so important. Because if our old reliable horse, consistent horse, is at good odds, it's worth the wager, worth the gamble to bet it. Maybe to win, Zactus, trifectas, factoring in the exotics. But it's worth if it's at the right price. I keep saying it, but it's so true. The bet, or the odds make the bet. And then before playing a track too seriously, notice if horses are winning from certain tracks at the start of the meet. Now, I get excited just as much as anybody else when we'll say Keeneland starts its race meet, or Del Mar in the summer, Saratoga. I get all antsy, and I can't wait to throw down and put some wagers in and start betting with both hands. I'm as guilty as anybody. But I don't want to bet too seriously until I see maybe in the short term if tracks are doing better coming from this racetrack or that racetrack. I used to study Keeneland a lot in the spring especially, and I try to keep tabs on if horses that came from Gulfstream Park on the turf did better than Tampa Bay Downs on the turf. I used to see if Turfway, back when Keeneland had a polytrack surface, if the Turfway horses, no matter what their odds, had an advantage, or did the fairground horses in the winter have an advantage at Keeneland. So when the meet first starts, before you bet too heavily or seriously, or too much of your bankroll, kind of proceed, be patient, proceed cautiously, and see if there's any tracks that are producing more winners than others. Because, going back to one of our first angles about the racing competition, they might have been facing better competition. And it would be worth your time to do some due diligence and research in past race charts and race results of particular meets, especially those short meets like Keeneland and Saratoga and Del Mar. See if they're coming from certain tracks, winning more from certain tracks. So hopefully this helps you if you're wondering what to do with horses that are shipping in. Hopefully this video has provided some angles to you, what to look for, what to look at. I would just reiterate that you want to be conscious of the race competition level that horses have raced against. Look in those for the race ratings. Look for that number and see how well that competition was. And keep track of the tracks that do well and don't do well. Because some racetracks have more competition, more competitive fields than others. So those horses coming from those tracks might have an advantage. Also just to reiterate, be aware of any horse switching from one track surface to another. Look for racetracks that have similar compositions in the race surfaces and that horse for course angle. And hopefully all those little angles and factors will help you out. Do not be afraid to bet a shipper at a decent price, and be hesitant to bet a shipper that's trying a lot of new things at a low price. Hopefully that'll help you out when you're betting these shippers, or what to do with shippers that are shipping in. If you hadn't already, again, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how you handle shippers, what your angles are, or what your preferences are. Visit weekendhandicapper.com, where you get see all the latest tools, tips, and tutorials to help you win money at the racetrack. So thank you for everybody for tuning in. I love everybody that watches and takes the time out of their busy days to watch these videos. I love making them and hopefully making you a better handicapper. So until next time, happy handicapping, smart wagering.